Wagwan. Good morning, good night. Welcome back. And if you're listening for the first time, I'm your host, Melanie Byfield, welcoming you to episode 2 in this new season of The Real Situation, where we give you a taste of Jamaican politics. I'd like to start by saying a big up to all the Jamaican athletes competing in Tokyo, giving it their all, regardless of the result. And I'd also like to send love and much respect to Mommy Rocket, the amazing Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, who's competing in her final World Championships. Before we get into it, I'd also like to send up some prayers to the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Portia Simpson Miller, in her time of sickness. So, we're in the start of the third term of the Holness administration. Both government and opposition leaders are the same, so you might ask, what's different? Well, the people have spoken. The government lost 14 seats compared to the previous election, and the opposition did not win the election. There's only a 7-seat difference, so both parties are under some pressure to perform. So let's get the formalities out of the way. Who is where? So the PM has an 18 member cabinet. I'll attach a full list of who those are, but I'll just highlight some of those positions. So the Deputy Minister and Minister of National Security and Peace, as it's now called, is still Horace Chang. There is a new ministry called... It's a ministry without portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister, with responsibility for efficiency, innovation and digital transformation, and that is Audrey Marks in that position, the newly elected former ambassador, newly elected member of Parliament in Manchester. Then there is the back in the cabinet is Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development, with responsibility for land titling and settlements, Mr. Bobby Montague. Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, while that is still Floyd Green, he's now become leader of government business in the House of the lower house. Matthew Samuda is now the Minister of Water, Environment and Climate Change. Minister without portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for science, technology and special projects is Andrew Wheatley. A Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development with responsibility for works is Robert Morgan. The Prime Minister also announced the appointment of 13, that is correct, 13 junior ministers. And I will attach a list of those, but to run through them real quick. There is Corencia Morrison, she's culture. So let me back up first of all and say that these junior ministers, the Prime Minister put them forward as the next generation, basically, of leaders who would be replacing people like Olivia Grange, Darrell Vaz and Delroy Chuck, who have said that this would be their last term. So at some point during the term or when the term is done, those people won't be returning to government. So then we have Corencia Morrison, Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Crystal Lee, Health and Wellness. I must say she puts in the work. She's well respected since she's been a councillor in St Mary, and now she's a 2-term MP in St Anne. And she's in a ministry which needs a lot. So hopefully she's going to bring it. We have Delroy Williams in Local Government and Community Development. Rhoda Moy Crawford, Education, Skills, Youth and Information. Donovan Williams, Labour and Social Security. Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, National Security and Peace. Delano Seavright, Industry, Investment and Commerce. Orlando Terrelong, Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Xavier Main, Finance and Public Service, Frank Witter, Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Tova Hamilton, Tourism, Marissa Dalrymple Filbert, Justice and Constitutional Affairs, and Senator Abka Fitzhenley, Office of the Prime Minister. And just want to draw your extra attention there to Marissa Filbert, who will be Dalrymple Filbert, who will be talking a little bit more about her Justice and Constitutional Affairs appointment. I'm not going to go over the shadow cabinet because I haven't seen an official release since the election. There was a list released in January 2024. I'm not sure if there's been any changes made to that, but if I don't see anything before the next episode, then we can go through that. But for now, I think I'm going to wait and see if there's any other kind of official release. One thing I know for certain is that Dr. Alfred Dawes will be the Health and Wellness Minister. So there's no change there. He's the newly elected MP for St. Catherine South East. So, yeah. 28 more opposition MPs in Parliament this session, as this term, so there should be some interesting debate in the lower house. Both parties have nominated their senators. As per the Constitution, the government nominates 13 and the opposition nominates 8. 3 of the government's senators are also cabinet ministers. That's Kamina Johnson-Smith, Auburn Hill and Dana Morris-Dixon. The other 10 are Tom Tavares Finson. He returns as the president, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Charles Sinclair is the deputy president. Then there is also Abka Fitzhenley, Keith Duncan, Shireen Golding Campbell, very nice to see her back in the Senate, Kavan Gale, Marlon Morgan, Elon Thompson, Rose Bennett Cooper, and Christian George Louis Tavares Finson, newly appointed senator and son of the president. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what he brings. Now, moving on to the opposition senators, the Donna Scott Motley returns as the leader of government business for the Senate, for the opposition, and the ever lovely Donna Scott Motley, very professional. I love her. Cleveland Tomlinson, Ramon Small Ferguson. There is a very refreshing appointment in Dr. Maziki Thames. She's a political scientist and professor of government at UWI. Nice to see a government expert in government. Lambert Brown, Alan Rutherford Bernard, Keisha Gay Anderson, and Floyd Morris. Those are the 8 opposition senators. And of course, all 63 members of Parliament were sworn in and are in place. So let's check out the real situation. You're going to notice there's no Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. I was really looking forward to hearing Marlene Malahoo Forte and Isaac Buchanan debate constitutional reform, right? But she's no longer the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. So who's going to be leading constitutional affairs on the government side? Okay, so that ministry's actually been merged. And it's now going to be headed up by Delroy Chuck and Marissa Dalrymple Filbert under what is now the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Ms. Dalrymple Filbert, I go call her Marissa said, she's very anxious to do it. And I agree. Anxious is a word that comes to mind. Marlene Malahoo Forte, she's very intelligent. She's an intelligent lady. She's an ambitious lady. So no offense, but, I can't imagine her being left out of cabinet and nothing else now go on, right? And no disrespect to the fact that she retained her seat as MP for St. James West Central, but nothing else now go on. I mean, let's look at her resume. right? Prior to politics, she was a resident magistrate judge. She was a senator between 2009 and 2016. And during that time, she was State Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and Shadow Health Minister. 2016 is when she was elected to become the MP for St James West Central, and during that time she was Attorney General from 2016 to 2022, and then she became Minister of Constitutional and Legal Affairs from 2022 right up until when Parliament ended. So here's a couple of things that I was wondering about. The DPP is retiring, finally. And Marlene Malahoo Forte used to be a judge. I mean, that's one of the requirements to become DPP. I'm just saying. I heard an interview with Paula Llewellyn, and she was asked some real fool question, like if she would consider being Attorney General. I mean, what can go so? The Attorney General is actually appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. There's no particular term for employment, so you never know. You might see Marlene pop up in there. Watch this space. So what's the way forward for constitutional reform? The Prime Minister said to the leader of the opposition that, he wanted to work together to complete the work they'd started on making Jamaica a republic. The leader of the opposition doesn't seem so convinced. He was emphasising how unity is strength and, it can't be achieved by platitudes and empty words, and how one hand can't clap. And wasn't impressed with the events that happened. He referenced events that happened that day that didn't go well in that regard. And, you would think that he's talking about the fact that Juliet Holness returned as Speaker of the House of Representatives, right, without the support of even one opposition member, which is unprecedented. The person who's normally nominated traditionally receives support from both sides, right? But her nomination came from and was seconded by the government. And there was absolutely no applause from the opposition, just bare silence. But they did say in advance that they weren't going to be supporting a nomination for Juliet Holness or Marissa Dalrymple Filbert, who was a former speaker, because of serious concerns about how the business of the House had been handled before, around the tabling of reports that came from the Auditor General and the Integrity Commission under the leadership of both those ladies as Speaker, which were delayed despite advice to the contrary from the Attorney General. And so there's a feeling that there was an erosion in the confidence of that position, right? There was also an objection from Advocates Network, who basically said that, perception matters, and there appears to be, a disregard for concerns about the concentration of power and proximity to power that occurs when spouses control the two highest offices in the governance of the country. Not about the person's integrity, but perception. And then I guess there's the question of why somebody else wasn't selected, because this all seems to have started off with a very contentious matter. In comparison, Tom Tavares Finson was returned to President of the Senate. He was nominated by Kamina Johnson-Smith, who's leader of the government business in the Senate, and he was seconded by Donna Scott Motley, who was the opposition leader of government business in the Senate. So, and there was applause, rousing applause from both sides of the Senate. So that is really how it's supposed to go. Okay, so what's going to happen with, what's being said about constitutional reform and what's going to happen? The Joint Select Committee report, when you check it out on the website, it still hasn't been posted. It's still pending. And those issues from before didn't go anywhere either. We could highlight a couple of them. Of course, there's the CCJ. In the pre-election debate, the Prime Minister said that he now prefers a domestic apex court. To quote a recent Gleaner editorial, it says, the most serious jurists don't believe the establishment of a domestic third-tier court is a viable option, especially when there already exists a high-quality regional court, which Jamaica helped to establish and pay for, on which Jamaican judges sit, and which is led by a highly accomplished and respected Jamaican jurist. There's also the presidential nomination process, which is a contentious issue. Public education and engagement. There were town halls in only 6 of the 14 parishes. And then there's the impeachment provision. The Prime Minister made a statement during, I believe, when he was speaking to the junior ministers. He was saying that corruption and arrogance are not just personal failings, they weaken the entire government. Corruption drains resources and erodes public trust. The importance of that impeachment provision is highlighted in the pending criminal trial, right, against Roel Reid. There was a recent article where they were talking about his upcoming trial, saying that 15% of the witnesses can't be found. But the trial is still going to go ahead, and it starts on October 6th. Now, as a reminder, Roel Reid, former education minister, his wife, Sharon, his daughter, Sharelle, Kim Brown Lawrence, a JLP councillor, and the Caribbean Maritime Museum president, Fritz Pinnock, were all charged with approximately $50 million, a $50 million fraud, where it was alleged that money was diverted from the Caribbean Maritime Museum in 2019. So, it's going to be interesting to see where we land with constitutional reform. I'm actually going to wrap up with this article, a very interesting article from Danielle Archer. She's the Director of National Integrity Action, and I'm going to read you, I've just taken some snippets from this article. Malahoo Forte is the only member of the old cabinet who was dropped by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. She's led the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, which was created to drive the constitutional reform process. With her out of the cabinet, Delroy Chuck's Ministry of Justice has been renamed the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Meanwhile, Archer said the return of individuals facing or who have faced serious allegations of corruption is hardly surprising. When the public remains unaware of which senators and members of Parliament from the previous administration are under investigation for illicit enrichment, and when the Prime Minister himself has yet to transparently address his own inquiries, it signals a troubling normalisation of opacity, said Archer. What's more telling is that questions surrounding the integrity of political leadership did not hinder their re-election. That reality reflects a deeper truth. For many voters and citizens alike, ideals like accountability, transparency, and ethical governance haven't yet become decisive electoral criteria, she added. Until citizens demand more, until we insist that integrity is non-negotiable, we'll continue to see the same patterns repeat. Business as usual. In that vacuum of public demand, corruption thrives not as an exception, but as a feature of the system. I kind of switched this article around a little bit and brought the title to the end because it feeds through to an interesting question, right? Regarding the deal with constitutional reform. Marlene Malahoo Forte's non-appointment to the cabinet conspicuous, right? That was how the article was titled. And Daniel Archer goes on to say, naturally, this raises the question: what happens next? Has the reform agenda been paused, redirected, or quietly shelved? Which way will we choose? Ask Dalroy Chuck and Marissa Dalrymple Filbert, because they've been designated the new drivers and handed the keys to the Porsche. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Podcast Index, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Apple, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And if you want to reason about anything that we talked about, or if you can't find any of the material, you can email me on atasteofja@outlook.com. Until the next time, thank you for supporting this podcast. Please subscribe, like, follow, and share it with your friends and family. And again, I thank you for taking the time to listen. One love. Yes, the word is love.